Hi everyone, today I will be walking you guys through my current trends presentation on STEM education. I will focus on what it consists on, the idea behind STEM education, how it emerged, how to implement it in the classroom, and how it continues to grow in regards to integration. STEM has been around for longer than what we think. It actually stands for serpents, tigers, elephants, and monkeys. Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Oh, my bad. I think I was on the wrong slide. I just wanted to make sure that you guys were paying attention. So moving on, it actually stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. For the longest, these subjects have been taught in isolation, and the point behind STEM is to blend these disciplines together in order to encourage hands-on experience and give students a chance to gain and apply real-world knowledge in the classroom. The idea behind the subject is to prepare students for future jobs, to compete with other individuals around the world. Imagine if we had our students solve problems, find and use evidence, think critically, and collaborate on projects since the early grades. By the time they are on their way to college, they will be well prepared to choose a career path and excel in these. So let's think right now about the term itself. It's easy to define the math and science components, but it starts to get complicated when we see the words engineering and technology. These subjects include topics like computer programming, analytics, electronics, robots, and even civil engineering. I even asked myself, how can I teach this to my students in my lessons? It's a question that not only I have, but many educators have as well. When we think about the history of education, STEM is a new subject that has recently been a trending topic compared to other subjects. It permits students to relate to the real world and it encourages them to ask higher thinking questions. It wasn't until the early 2000s that Dr. Judith Ramaley coined the term known as STEM. She was working as the director of the National Science Foundation when she and her team came up with the term to describe the splendid curriculum. It started as MET, but Dr. Ramaley didn't like it, so quickly they transitioned it to STEM. In the following slide, you can see our lovely creator of the term STEM, Dr. Judith Ramaley. While learning about STEM and how it emerged and how to implement it, I thought it was really important to learn about where Dr. Ramaley was coming from. She's actually been the president of many acclaimed universities throughout the States, and she's always backed up the fact that science and math are critical to a basic understanding of the universe, while engineering and technology are means for people to interact with the universe. This is basically how she began to work on creating this term of STEM and implementing it in school curriculums from an early age. I think it's super interesting how she thought it would be a great idea to incorporate it into earlier grades in order to teach students to see education from a different point of view. It helps students generate these higher thinking questions that we as educators want them to be creating on their own, or actually collaborating in group projects. We want to make sure that we're not the ones telling them these questions. We just want to be facilitators and helping them generate these why questions or how does questions on their own. In the following slide, I found this video that explains a little bit more the term STEM and how implementing this kind of education into our curriculum, it's going to benefit our students in the long run. I don't know, let me think a bunch of activities that I could actually do in different lessons and it's not giving me extra work. Like, it sounds like extra work, but honestly, it makes learning more fun because they always can see an example of things that actually can happen. So check it out and let's see.
STEM. It's the acronym for science, technology, engineering and mathematics. The disciplines that are vital for a striving economy and a safe and technologically advanced society. Right from kindergarten till 12th grade, most of STEM teaching and learning centres around science and mathematics. Comparably, little attention has been given to integrated technology and applying engineering techniques to have a greater understanding of the science and math concepts. For many years, the 4 subjects have been taught in isolation. But the new reform method, like the Next Generation Science Standards, is placing more emphasis on the connections between and among the STEM disciplines. To understand how this trend might affect teaching and learning in the future, we need to take a closer look at integrated STEM education, not just the individual subjects that make up the acronym. Affecting all in the real world, science relies on technology, mathematics and engineering. And engineering depends on findings from science, the application of mathematics and the use of technology. Imagine if kindergarten to 12th grade students were inspired and provided fun, hands-on and engaging experiences to tackle these subjects. That too, in integration with real-life problems, will they learn more and more deeply? Might they see STEM disciplines as more relevant to their lives? Could it lead to more of them pursuing STEM courses and careers? The answers to these questions depends partly on how integrated STEM education is implemented in schools and in out-of-school settings. Research suggests that implementation has to balance learning in the individual STEM subjects with more connected ways of learning. In addition, because it can be hard for students to make these connections themselves, teachers should transform to facilitators and need to make the connections explicit. Inside the classroom, some teachers may use instructional approaches like problem-based learning or engineering design steps to teach problem solving and to introduce integrated STEM education to their students. Outside the classroom, students have been exposed to STEM connections in museums and science centres through after-school experiences, like engaging in STEM-focused robotic competitions or through simple tinkering. However, we need more research to better understand the potential benefits and limitations of integrated STEM education for students, teachers and schools. What, for example, are the implications of integrated STEM education for high schools? How can teachers be better prepared to teach in such proposed integrated methods? And how can we assess kids to determine what they learn and what is the level of attainment as a result of integrated STEM experiences? The list of questions is long, but answering them is important for our students, teachers, and the nation. For more information about integrated STEM education, check out www.stembestpractice.com.
So the question is, how do I STEM my classroom? Like I said before, it may be overwhelming just to think about how to incorporate this term into our classroom, but it shouldn't. Depending on the grade you teach, you want to make sure your students have a solid foundation and then build from there. Start slow. For example, the younger grades, we want to make sure they're fluent in skills like addition and subtraction, measurements, or even identifying their shapes. Also, create an environment that encourages observation and generate questions that begin with why or how does. Like I mentioned before, we want to make sure that they're working on their own, creating these questions and finding these answers. Think about an activity that you can group multiple subjects also. This doesn't have to be a single day lesson. You can do different activities throughout the week and have students see the connections between different subjects and how these can relate to one another. So I think this was my favorite slide out of the presentation, just because I didn't know until recently there was a growing movement to incorporate the arts and humanities into this term, and I guess it's goes from STEM to STEAM because we add that A in there. Not only, like, we shouldn't think that just the hard sciences are the ones who are going to have our students think out of the box, but humanities and arts do this as well. I think it teaches also students how to broaden their imagination in regards to writing and literature. Also, an idea that I thought it would be good, it's a great opportunity for co-teaching. Just because we teach math doesn't mean we can't learn how to teach literature, or it's a great opportunity for like different teachers that teach different subjects to come together and um, create activities that will integrate these two subjects together and permit students to see how these can relate with one another. On this side here, you can see that I put Game of Clue as an example. So I thought it would be a great idea if I were teaching like a 5th grade class of adapting a game of Clue for the classroom. We can divide, let's say there's a murder mystery or something like that. We can have different teams work on different parts of the murder scene, or different different individuals. Maybe they work separately and then they come together. So maybe some are in charge of creating the scene and depicting it. Others are in charge of writing the backstory for this mystery murder. And some are in charge of interviewing the suspects for this mystery murder scene. So it made me think like it would be a great opportunity to see how students put their creativity to work and imagination to work. And at the end, I would love to see what they came up with. And it is just a great idea to put them together as a team, and as teachers we would facilitate them, like what happens when like a murder happens. Like, I majored in criminology and law, so this is something that it would interest me to teach, just because I have also a minor in forensics and I did crime scene for a while. So I know a lot about this subject that I can teach it in a way that not as in depth how I was like taught in the university, but in a way that they can also see this picture. And you never know if somebody wants to become a detective in this class. I just thought it would be a great activity. It was an activity that popped up in my head that I thought, and not only to do with 5th grade classes, but as they get older, like we can modify this activity. I don't know. Thought it was a good thing to share with you guys. So if you've reached this far, thank you so much for listening to my presentation about STEM education and contemporary trends out there. And right now, if you have any questions or anything that you need clarification, I'd be happy to answer these questions for you, and also just learn a little bit about if you learned something new today. What was your favorite part of the presentation, or anything that you think that would be useful for your classroom. And also in the next slide, you can see that I have a glossary, and it's going to be helpful for this activity that I planned for our interactive handout, and it's going to be a crossword puzzle. So this would help you determine what are the words that you're looking for to incorporate in the crossword puzzle, and they're not like new words, they're just terms that I use throughout the presentation in regards to STEM education. So right now we can divide the class in partners and just do breakout rooms and work on this. And also while you're at it, maybe you can just chat a little bit with your partner and see what they thought was the most important thing about the presentation, or share an activity that you think would be great to include in our classrooms that involves STEM learning as well. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and that's it. Thank you.